Hi, I'm Tim, and this is the first in a series of videos I'm going to do where I sort of outline some of the things that I've learned in the first year now that I've been sim racing. I'm coming up on my 1 year anniversary of when I bought my wheel and really started getting into this hobby that I am now thoroughly obsessed with. So, in this video, I want to talk about practice in general. Sim racing is a skill, it's not something that you just can sit down and fly around a track and be competitive at. The learning curve is rather steep, and in my life, I equate it most closely to learning a musical instrument. I spent most of my life playing music, either in band in school or in rock and metal bands after school. After school, not just after school, but after I graduated school as an adult. And I played music fairly regularly until 3 or 4 years ago, when I was sort of forced to quit because I have an illness. That's something I'll talk about in a future video, but for today, practice. And why I think if you treat sim racing practice similarly to the way musicians treat learning a musical instrument and mastering a musical instrument, I think you'll see some decent improvement. And I think that is something you can probably take with you even when you become proficient, maybe even good or excellent as a sim racer. You still need to practice. And so how does treating sim racing what does that look like if you treat sim racing like practicing a musical instrument? Like what does that look like? Well, first you need to warm up, and the video you see, the gameplay footage you see, is my warm-up race from this morning. I picked a car I like, a track I'm somewhat familiar with, and I ran a 30-minute race this morning. That's how I warmed up. Why do you need to warm up? Well, sim racing, like playing a musical instrument, like golf, I guess is also an apt analogy, is a lot of muscle memory and repetitive building up that muscle memory, learning what the force feedback feels like. And if you warm up before you do what you really want to do, what you really want to work on, then you're going in, you've refamiliarized yourself with the feel of the wheel, with the throttle, the brake, and I think that it's just important. It's important to have that to remind your body of what you're doing and to get into that mindset. The important thing, though, is that when you're warming up, you run the race. You don't, go ahead and turn damage off, because that what this isn't about. This is just about turning the laps, racing against the AI. Getting some race experience. Whatever. But turn the damage off, and don't restart if you crash, or if the AI freaks out, which is, it happens. Just finish the race. This is a good opportunity. This is a learning moment. Sometimes races aren't going to go your way, and sometimes we just have to make the best of a bad situation. That applies to a lot of things in life, not just sim racing. And if you were racing in a real race car and you spun out, you wouldn't be able to just hit a button and start the race over. Don't do that here. If you want to run a clean race, then run a clean race. Learn how to run a clean race. But this can be a little difficult if you're very new. You're not going to be familiar with any of the cars. So I'd recommend picking a car that's got some traction control. It's got some ABS already built in. GT3 cars are wildly popular in sim racing, and they're prevalent in every racing title out there. Everyone has a plethora of GT3 cars available. Pick one, run some laps, and you need to do this every day. At least 20 minutes every day. Just like if you were practicing a musical instrument. Practice every day. However, you need to have good practice. If you're exhausted, tired, if you're just going to be prone to make mistakes. And so, make sure you're rested, make sure you're feeling good, or as good as you can. As a person with an illness, I know sometimes you just don't feel that good. But you got to practice. So try to find try to find a time during the day when you can sit down and get your practice in, but start with a warm up. Also, you need to listen to your body. Unless you have a dedicated racing rig cockpit setup. I don't. I'm new. I don't have that. I sit in an office chair, and I have a wheel stand that my wheels hook to. So be mindful that sometimes your body's not going to be used to the position you're in. For me specifically, recently I forced myself, I modded my brake pedal. I added a load cell to my brake pedal, and I had to completely relearn from switching from a potentiometer to a load cell. I had to relearn how to brake, and I thought this was a perfect opportunity for me to learn left foot braking. I've driven my whole life. I actually spent 10 years as a big truck driver, a semi-truck driver. I've always used my right foot for braking. So when I started sim racing, one of the first tips I saw was to left foot brake. Well, I could never really teach myself how to do that. The load cell felt so different that it was an opportunity for me to learn how to left foot brake, and I used it, and now I exclusively left foot brake, and it's probably been the best change I've made since, from what I did starting off till now is to learn left foot braking. But what that did was, having both my feet up in the air, I realized really quickly that the office chair I was sitting in has really bad lumbar support. And after just a short time, my lower back was getting very, was developing a lot of pain and stuff. So be mindful that, if you don't have the best situation to sit and do your sim racing, that you might need to do some things to, make yourself comfortable. Because if you're going to be sitting there for an hour or two at a time, you can put a lot of stress on your lower back or whatever. So just be aware of what your body's telling you. Don't push yourself too hard. Like, in music, when you're playing guitar, if your hand starts to cramp up or something, playing through the pain isn't the best thing. And pain tells you something's not right. So if something's not right, you need to fix that. So what I did was I got a nice lumbar support. Much better. Eventually, I'd like to have a dedicated rig. But for now, I don't have that. I have this, and I've got to make the best out of what I have. And so be mindful of what my body's telling me, and do what I can to take over, to take away whatever strain or stress you have. And try not to get discouraged if you're not seeing the results as quickly as you like. Change happens incrementally in all things. Some folks, I'm sure, were able to sit down right away and just be world beaters right away. Like some people, stuff just makes sense to them. We all hear stories about musical savants who, can pick up a musical instrument and just master it, whatever. Most of us aren't like that. Most of us need to practice. So, if this is you, if you can do that, well, you're probably not, this video will do nothing for you. But, if that's not you, if you're the 99.9% who struggle to get better and are striving to get better, then practice is where it's got to start. I would consider recording your practice sessions. That was the entire purpose of this YouTube channel for me, was to document where I was now, in hopes that in 6 months, a year, 2 years, I can look back and go, whoa, look at how much look how far I've come. You can get great recording software for free, and there are tons of tutorials. It's no problem to record, your practice sessions, your races, whatever. Almost everybody's doing it anyway. I would consider recording what you're doing. Also, as a musician, I had a teacher. As a sim racer, you do too. You really do. YouTube has so many good resources. Specifically, I would say Empty Box's Sim Racing 101 series should almost be required viewing if you want to race online against other people. Like, in iRacing, you can tell almost immediately who knows what they're doing and who doesn't. Especially in the lower licenses. But you have resources out there, not just in the form of those tutorial videos either, but content itself. If you love, if you're a sim racer, then I'm sure you watch sim racing YouTubers like Jimmy Broadbent or Jardier or Matt Malone, F1 guys like Ben Daly or Areva or whatever. There's tons of guys out there, tons of people out there putting out great content. And even if it's not a tutorial video, you can learn a lot by watching what they do. You can, if you're having a problem with a specific track or a specific car, search for it on YouTube. See what somebody else did. Watch their laps. If they're in, most of them are in cockpit view. In a lot of titles, you can see their inputs, their pedal inputs, their steering inputs, so you can see what they're doing to get around the track. Learn from them. Watch them. You're probably watching them anyway, but watch them with a more analytical eye. See what they're doing. See where they're braking. See what their brake input is, what their throttle input is coming out of the corner. See what gears they're using. See if they're upshifting or downshifting. In this practice video you see behind me, I'm not just racing against people. There are times that I try an extra downshift in a corner, or if I'm having some wheel slip coming out of a corner, I'll try a quick shift. I don't know. You try different things in practice. You try it. But you really need to make sure that whatever you're doing, you're having fun with it. Because if you're not having fun, you're not going to stick with it. And practice really needs to be something you stick with. There used to be a professional American football player named Terrell Owens who everybody hated. But one of the fascinating stories I heard about him, and at the height of his, in his prime, I guess it would be a better way to put it, he was one of the best receivers in the NFL. And I had watched a video somewhere because he had done some weird thing on the field, and he was always embroiled in some controversy because of his antics. But one of his players defending him kind of said, as some commentator had said something about him being lazy or something because he had a poor attitude. One of his commentators, one of his teammates had mentioned that the one thing people don't know about him is that he loves practice as much as he loves the game. And that's true for a lot of professional athletes, because you can't reach that level without loving every aspect of what goes into becoming that. And I thoroughly believe that becoming a good or great sim racer is going to involve a fair amount of practice. So try to find a way to do that in a way that you're having fun doing it. Because the fact of the matter is, like most things, you only get better by doing it, right? You want to be a better writer. You're not going to be a better writer by watching Netflix shows. You got to put your butt in the chair, put your fingers on the keys, and write. And through that repetition, through that experimentation, through that experience, you get better. You just do. But that being said, the one thing I hate, I've hated for a long time, is the saying that practice makes perfect. It's a terrible, terrible saying. You should wipe that out of your mind immediately. Practice doesn't make perfect. Practice makes permanent. If you're practicing things wrong, all you're doing is cementing bad habits into your brain. So make sure you're aware of what's happening, why your times are what they are, and if you're making mistakes, if you're spinning out in corners, if you're whatever, make sure you know why. Right? Are you giving it too much throttle out of the corner? Are you not waiting for the car to be settled before you turn in? Are you making wildly ill-advised overtake attempts? If you don't know what you're doing wrong, it becomes exponentially more difficult to correct it. So take on your sim racing with a little bit more of an analytical eye and try to figure out what you're doing wrong. Because if you can make a mistake and know when you made the mistake, why you made the mistake, what happened, then you can correct it. And I'm just now getting to the point where I can almost always understand why something happens with most of the cars I drive. Now, if I get into a brand new title or a brand new car that I don't have a lot of experience in, that's going to take some time to develop. But you need to develop that skill. That's a skill you need, the skill to be able to understand what the force feedback's telling you, what and how it translates to what you're seeing on your screen or in your VR headset. You have to be able to avoid making the same mistake over and over again. And doing that, knowing what you're doing, will really help you avoid making that same mistake over and over again. So, it's just, you really need that. You really need to be able to analyze yourself, a little self-reflection, and see what you're doing. And if you can understand how what you did affects what's happening on the screen, then bam, you're golden, because then you can start correcting that, and you can start practicing it the right way, and you can cement those good habits instead of just doing the same thing over and over again. And that's really part of why you need to make sure the AI is set to a level that you find challenging. Because if you make mistakes, they'll pull away, and if you're running well, you'll catch up. Whereas if you're just kicking their ass all the time, you can make mistakes and still win, and you're not learning anything. So challenge yourself. When you're confident you can maneuver a car on a track, start racing with others. I find that the community extends beyond YouTube. Almost all these sim racers have Discord channels. Specifically, if you're a member of Race Department or any of these clubs, there's Discord channels just for them that aren't related to YouTube channels, where you can find like-minded people to race against on a regular basis. So challenge yourself. Race against people, not just the AI. The AI can be manipulated. You can learn to game the AI. You're not going to game a person. Well, you can, but you can't predict what they're going to do the way you can predict an AI. Like F1 2017, I played a lot of with a gamepad, and I learned pretty early on that I could kind of move the AI wherever I wanted them, depending on where I was coming at them from behind. And that sort of manipulation won't work against a real player. So challenge yourself. Get into races with people. Get into community races with people. Even if you're going to be a back marker. I race with Jardier every week. I'm always a back marker. I love it. I get to race against some really good racers. Sometimes I'm in the middle of the pack. Other times I'm in the back. But every time I strap in and I go, I feel like I'm doing a little bit better. And that's a pretty awesome feeling. And that really fuels my desire to continue practicing. So the best way to get better is to challenge yourself. You want to learn to get faster. By racing AI at low settings, you won't learn that way. You got to get out there. You got to challenge yourself to constantly get better, to constantly grow as a sim racer. Now, coming up, I'm going to talk specifically about practicing in certain titles. I think there's one title out there specifically that can make a world of difference for you just in one of their game modes. And that's what I'll talk about next time. But for now, I think it's pretty good. I think we talked about a lot of things. So practice every day. Warm up before you practice. Make sure you're awake and alert. Make sure you're comfortable. And have fun. But challenge yourself. If you're winning every single race you run against the AI, you need to up the difficulty. You need to challenge yourself. Anyway, I've been Tim. This has been the first in my series of new videos, kind of outlining what I've experienced, and I look forward to making more. And have a great day.